The Connecting Europe Express has arrived at its final destination. Now, is this the end or is it only the beginning? This is RailFreight Live. Yes, hello everyone. It's Friday, 8 October, and in the studio with me is Akos Ersek from the UIRR. Thank you for coming all the way from Brussels to Rotterdam.
Thank you, Mayuri, for the invitation. Glad to be here.
You're most welcome. You didn't come by train, did you?
Regrettably not.
Yes, you came by car, but you were on a train this week because, and we were all on a train this week, the Connecting Europe Express was in our area. Now, we got on in Amsterdam, but it went via Amsterdam to Rotterdam, to Brussels, Antwerp as well, to Luxembourg, and it has arrived at its final destination in Paris. And that was good luck for us, because that meant we had the chance to get on board. We both did. The Connecting Europe Express was actually meant as a way to bring Europe together. Now, is this something that has been done in your opinion?
I think so. I think it was a great organization. It brought together a lot of people, and it spawned a lot of discussion and a lot of new understandings.
Yeah, because it went through 26 countries, I think, 33 border crossings, 8,000 kilometers. It was a huge journey. It started in Lisbon in Portugal, 2nd of September, and then it went through all of Europe. 3 trains were needed because there was a difference in gauge. So that was something very spectacular, I think, that all of this was done. Now my question is, isn't this something of a marketing instrument rather than something that actually brings change?
Well, we will have to see. We cannot say right now whether this is the case. I certainly hope it will not remain a marketing exercise, but rather it will be a beginning of something wonderful.
Yeah, we still have a lot of time to see the results, as you said. A lot of discussions have been going on. Let's first have a look at the video. We jumped on board in Amsterdam, we got off in Luxembourg, and we have a video report of that. The Connecting Europe Express is in the Netherlands, and we as RailFreight.com, we are on board. As you can see, we have this bracelet we can step on and we can get off wherever we want. Now we're traveling from Amsterdam to Brussels, and my colleague is traveling from Brussels even all the way to Battenberg, where it's all about freight. Now the people on this train have one common goal. They want to connect and they want to talk about RailFreight.
Started in Rome, went through the Brenner Pass, then Vienna, and then Frankfurt, Berlin, Stockholm, and now here in Rotterdam. So finishing in Paris in a couple of days. It's been brilliant. We have been on time. I think we are given special treatment because a normal train would not move so easily across the borders in Europe. But we have been on time for 34 days, so this is quite an achievement.
For the Netherlands, it's a big opportunity to show to the European Union what international rail transport means for the country, both for freight and for passengers. We had yesterday the day, and for today it's RailFreight. And it's a great day to show what we can offer, but also it's a great dialogue between the European officials and the Netherlands officials. And I see a lot of energy from all the stakeholders to take this opportunity, and that is already a big step towards better proposals and new actions in the future.
The main takeaway was that train length is one of the biggest opportunities to create more value for train transport and connection with ports, of course, and digitization to improve the speed of the freight trains across Europe.
For me, the journey started yesterday, where we had an informal session with the European colleagues with a nice setup of Dutch representatives to discuss the importance of rail freight and what should we do to improve it. That's where it started, and I could also really see the interest in the rail freight topic by the European Union members, that they're really interested in how to facilitate it to let it grow.
Well, in terms of rail freight, I think, of course, the Netherlands is a key country with the ports of Rotterdam and at the center of Europe. But also, we have to recognize this is one of the most congested networks in all of Europe. It's, in terms of utilization, #1 country. So therefore, of course, there are issues of optimal use of the existing network, but probably also the need to build new tracks dedicated to rail freight. Well, we are eagerly waiting for the Dutch government's Recover and Resilience plan to see what is in there. I hope there will be a strong emphasis on intermodality because this is clearly a comparative advantage of the Netherlands and Rotterdam. You are experts in logistics and therefore the ability to combine road transport with rail and with maritime. I hope that will be at the heart of the Dutch plan.
Akos, where did you get on this train?
I boarded in Brussels and went all the way to Battenborg.
Yeah. How did you experience the journey?
It was smooth. It was well attended. It was the right people.
Right. I also heard from Christian we had no delays, but I think we got priority because the train is usually a bit more delayed.
Well, passenger trains are not so delayed.
Yeah.
Freight trains, regrettably, sometimes are.
Yeah. It was a nice journey, a lot of fruitful discussions. Now, we gathered some points that were mentioned by several people, and I just would like to ask you for your opinion on those. This was something actually just mentioned in the video by Christian Schmidt. The rail freight corridor should not be isolated, but treated in an integrated way with the TEN-T network. Now, what do you think?
Well, I think this is very well said. Rail freight corridors are important part of the infrastructure, and TEN-T is about infrastructure. The two organizations, the two structures should be much more coherent. They should converse with one another. There's a proposal now to make the TEN-T coordinators into the chairpersons of rail freight corridors. So we very much hope.
Change?
Today, the leadership of rail freight corridors is rotated among the member countries of the corridor, and in this sense, it lacks a little bit leadership and vision. And I think a single TEN-T coordinator delegated from Europe can do this much better. He can or she can be the continuity in the life of the corridor. Similar way, if the managing director of the rail freight corridors was not a seconded person or a delegated person or an infrastructure manager, but rather hired purposefully for the corridor mission, I think that would even further reinforce the standing of the rail freight corridor.
Yeah, because the rail freight corridors are now evaluated and the process is evaluated. Is this opinion something that is shared on a broader basis?
I would like to think so, yes. So the sector definitely wants to see more action from rail freight corridors, more effective facilitation of collaboration between the infrastructure managers. And I think there's a lot to do to improve the effectiveness of rail freight corridors.
Yeah. When is the final evaluation?
Well, the evaluation has been published, and let's be honest, it hasn't found all, positive results or only positive results. So there's room to improve, and we think that the upcoming revision of the rail freight corridor regulation will be the great opportunity to further reinforce these structures.
And that will be done in the end of the year, right? The new...
The proposal, the Commission's proposal is slated to be accepted in the spring of next year. Okay. So still about 6 months or so away, and then the legislative process to begin. Okay,
we'll keep an eye on that. We hope that you will let us know from Brussels when that happens. Now, this was another thing that was raised not by one but by several people. Modernization and interoperability are essential, but the construction of new infrastructure is more critical. We need more railway tracks. What do you think?
What is more critical or less critical? The existing network has to function. It has to be performing. On the other hand, there's more capacity needed, more infrastructure capacity needed. So first, on modernization, there's absolute need for 22.5-ton axle load, for P400 loading gauge, 740-meter long trains, and the RTMS and electrification. These are the 5 elements that have to be there, and they are essential. There's nothing more important. On a second note, we need more infrastructure capacity. This can be achieved on the existing infrastructure and also, very importantly, on certain sections, new tracks.
How willing are infrastructure managers to do that last thing?
Well, sadly, the decision is not in the hands of infrastructure managers, but politicians, national politicians. And, well, here there's some more work to do.
Yeah, because these people don't say it without a reason. Apparently, it's easier to upgrade existing infrastructure. What needs to be done in order to encourage those governments?
Well, this is a long story. The European Green Deal requires member states to reduce their carbon footprint, and transport is a prime culprit. The emissions by trucks need to be reduced, and turning to electric rail freight is an obvious choice. I think this will convince member states better than anyone can as an individual.
Yeah, I can imagine it's also a very expensive job to create new infrastructure.
Well, new infrastructure is always expensive and costly. What is important is the existing infrastructure needs to perform.
Yeah.
And if that happens, we are already very much advanced. Secondly, along existing lines, to add a further track or two requires a relatively limited amount of land compared to building a new line in the middle of the country.
Yeah. And is that doable, just building sidelines and extensions of...
Well, it's doable, yes.
Yeah.
We see it several places that additional tracks are added to lines. So you need 5 meters of land, and you can do an additional track. 10 meters, you will get 2 tracks. Not everywhere, but
yeah,
a lot of places it's possible.
All right, because that brings us to the third question, which is all infrastructure investment should come from the public sector.
This is a difficult point because Europe decided, the European legislator decided that the rail network cannot be sold. So rail infrastructure is a public asset, it's not marketable. So private capital has no way of directly financing infrastructure development. They cannot put a mortgage on a railway line because it's a non-marketed, priceless asset. And in this sense, it has to come from the public sector, not should come, but it has to, there's no other way.
But is this a good thing?
It's a problematic issue because infrastructure should make a return on investment. So every private investment wants to make itself a profit. And the profit of infrastructure, of course, is value-added services. As the road network is not private, and as the road network is not run for profit, so the rail network can also not be run for profit, though it could be. And if it was run for profit, then of course a 2,000-ton freight train running across half of Europe is a great value generator, perhaps even better than a small, lightweight regional passenger train with a few dozen passengers.
Yeah. All right. This statement was made in Luxembourg, I believe. Do you remember who said it? I think it was the Minister of Infrastructure
yes.
in
Luxembourgish Minister of Infrastructure.
What was
Robert
the context of his opinion?
Well, this is more an observation than an opinion, and it's a product of the regulatory framework and a result. It's really a reckoning for many member states where there's a struggle to find resources to invest into rail. And what we need to remind ourselves, and let's do a little history, after the Second World War, there was very little money going into rail and a whole lot of money spent on building out the European motorway network, which is one of the densest in the world today. We can easily argue that that money was taken away from rail development, and instead of being spent on rail, it was spent on motorways. I think what we need to come to terms with is that road traffic has saturated to a level that we cannot further evolve. And now it's time to take these resources and again spend it back on rail to develop rail so that it can take a healthy balance in the modal split of transport.
Okay, good addition. Now, the fourth point is therefore a little bit surprising to me. The European Investment Bank was also there at the conference in Luxembourg. And this bank said, we are willing to finance RailFreight projects. All you need to do is ask. Are they able to finance RailFreight projects?
Absolutely. The European Investment Bank is a public development financing institution, and it is capable of offering money for public infrastructure. So they are not looking to put a mortgage on the rail network that is built. The guarantee is done by the member countries, founders of the bank. And yes, they are capable, and member states should consider taking a loan from the European Investment Bank, especially when they are combining their efforts to create something for freight.
Yeah. Why was it needed for them to say this?
Well, I think a lot of European member states are not thinking about using EIB money. It's a little bit thought of as World Bank, that it is for developing regions or countries, and it's not true. EIB money is readily available to be spent in developed West European countries as well.
Yeah. So it's just something that is not known yet that publicly?
It's not so much in the thinking, in the everyday thinking of financiers, ministries of finance.
Yeah. And is it really that simple? You just need to ask?
Yes.
And then they give you the
well,
money?
it's not asking. The form of asking requires paperwork, of course, and the EIB also wants to know return on investment. They're keen to understand what is the return, so they will not lend you money to create an ivory tower, but they will lend you money to create, let's say, freight-dedicated railway lines or railway tracks that are proven or known to have a positive impact on the modal balance and the carbon footprint. EIB has been tasked under the European Green Deal to provide green financing. And rail freight projects are a form of green financing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because the thing is that usually when you speak of big infrastructure projects, the big problem is always money. There's no money. There are no investors coming forward. The state isn't capable of financing this. So it really surprises me that they need to say this.
Well, not able to finance. The state can finance anything. They have built, the last decades, the most advanced motorway network in the world,
yeah.
in Europe. If that can be financed, anything can be financed. So I think politicians just say, "Oh, we cannot afford this," when they cannot find a better excuse on why not do something. So.
Would the Košice-Vienna line be a good example of a good investment for this European Investment Bank?
Are you implying the wide gauge or the broad gauge line? I don't think so.
No? Why not?
I don't think so because just delaying the gauge change from the Ukrainian border all the way to Vienna, it will not make anything better. Slovakia is not an ideal geography to build lines. Vienna is not, or Austria is not, let's say, the cheapest place to conduct transshipment. And I think there's not so much cargo that would continue its way on the Danube, which would have been one of the ideas behind this concept. So overall, I'm not certain. I think the way to go is more to develop gauge changing transshipment capacity on the borders of the UIC gauge network of Europe. So we have Malasiewicze, everybody knows. There are a couple of other transshipment zones in Poland with the Ukrainian, on the Ukrainian border. And more recently, there's a new terminal being built in Fenyesliske on the Hungarian-Ukrainian border that will have a comparable capacity to Malasiewicze very soon, East-West Gate.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it in a bit because we're going there next week. This question, we heard that Luxembourg is financing 50% of infra upgrades in France to resolve its own bottlenecks. Is this a good example for better cooperation between countries?
Absolutely, and there are several other examples. France and Italy jointly financed the Lyon-Turin tunnel. Switzerland and Italy has other arrangements for this kind of border crossing or border zone investments. So I think this is not a lone example, France, Luxembourg, and I think it can only be encouraged that these border zones, Germany and the Netherlands, also collaborates on the B2W route, and Germany has other arrangements towards Denmark. The Fehmarn Belt is also financed as a joint project between the German and the Danish side. I think the Öresund was also a collaborative effort of Sweden and Denmark. So there's several examples, and I think the initiative is positive and good and to be followed.
Yeah, okay. That was the last statement that we are discussing now. We just talked about this next conference coming up in Hungary next week. Are you going?
Yes, absolutely. I will be there. It's the Central European Intermodal Conference in Budapest next week from the 14, 15, I think, 2 days.
Yeah, Wednesday and Thursday. We'll also be there. We'll be reporting from the scene. And then you have your own conference coming up?
Indeed, there's the European Intermodal Summit on the 30th of November. And you will also be there, I understand.
Yes, I'll be moderating on your behalf. What is the main topic of this conference?
Well, we take stock of where we're standing, especially the European objective of doubling the market share of rail freight, which in our understanding means tripling the performance of intermodal rail. Because the cargo that is to be transported travels in trucks today, and intermodal is the way to transship this cargo over to rail freight.
So tripling the intermodal efforts.
Yes. Today, intermodal rail is half of rail freight, but the conventional part of rail freight will be very difficult to grow. There's not so many conventional commodities shipped by truck. And so the trucked cargo will go by intermodal. It's a huge effort, it's a huge challenge. And we are scratching our heads how to solve it. We have spoken of some of the solutions, new tracks, improved infrastructure. But there's one more aspect that needs to be considered, is how we exploit the existing infrastructure. And there's a cohabitation of the two value-generating services on tracks today, passenger transport and freight. And I think for me, one of the most encouraging little seedlings that we discovered in the Connecting Europe Express with our peer associations in Brussels, that we came to an agreement to try to stage a diplomatic, intelligent debate about creating a framework on how to allocate infrastructure capacity and how to manage the traffic between passenger and freight. And I think this is sorely needed, and I hope we will succeed with it in the next months and maybe year or years.
Okay, well, I suggest you keep us posted on that. We are also heading for another conference, which is the European Silk Road Summit. That is only 1 week after the Intermodal Europe conference. It's on 7 and 8 of December. It's in Amsterdam, and it's the 5th edition of this event. Now, as the title suggests, it's all about the new Silk Road, so traffic between Europe and Asia by rail, but also we are taking into account all the other modalities that are running there. So hopefully we see you during all of our conferences, either live or online, as what is possible right now. Thank you very much for joining us in Rotterdam.
Thank you for having me, and pleasure to have been here.
All right. And this is then the end of RailFreight Live. Next week we are here again and we'll report live from Budapest. Now, see you next week. Goodbye.
En ook u kunt hier zitten, want deze coronaproof studio is te huur voor uw congres, vergadering of webinar. We hebben alle techniek in huis om u hierbij te helpen. Kijk voor meer informatie op promedia.nl. Ik zie u graag in onze studio.